7 p.m. and we're going to call to order the March 11th, 2024 meeting of the Norton Finance Committee. Take attendance. Kevin. Don't see Kevin yet. Steve. Oh, Steve's connecting. We'll come back to you. Steve? Okay. Trace?
Here. Sorry, here. Sorry.
Okay, got it, Steve. No problem. Sandy?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Paul?
Here.
Cody?
Here.
Zach?
Here.
Bonnie's going to be absent tonight. I am here. Okay. All right, Mike.
All right. First budget we have is data processing. And I'll share my screen.
For the record, Paul, Kevin's here.
All right. So in the data processing budget, we have the part-time salary for one person. And then as far as expenses, there's a slight decrease from last year. We have repair maintenance of radios, $13,410. Equipment repair and maintenance, $12,500. All the professional services, $250,000. Printing, $200,000. Telephone communications, $50,000. And that's for all the phones in town hall, police, fire, council on aging, and highway. Office supplies, $2,000. And then additional equipment, $36,000, for a total of $408,000, $264.24.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Joe.
So Mike, on the professional services, I know that this is going to be a tough budget year, but is it reasonable to expect that low a number considering what we've already spent so far this year, and as well as what's been spent previously, or is this one of those areas where we're just looking to cut and we know what the cuts will be?
We haven't looked at cutting it yet. I'll just, double check with Charlene before I do the final budget, make sure that everything's accounted for. But based on what she had, that's what she was looking at.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I'm not sure who that was.
It was two at once.
Okay. Kevin, go ahead.
Mike, what's in the additional equipment this year? Driving that.
Additional equipment would be any printers, any laptops that are needed. A lot of it obviously is depending on when we go into the new town hall. If there's anything that additional we're going to need, but that's generally, it's just for anything that is over life.
Do we need that? I mean, do we have obsolete peripherals in this department?
I'm sure there are. We try and space it out so they all not go to end of life at the same time. So there's always something that needs to be replaced.
We don't like capitalize any of our like laptops and things through a capital program or something.
If we do that, we would remove this, yep. So that is still a possibility.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Sandy.
Mike, just to follow up with that, so is there one specific thing, this year that we're planning to purchase that results in that big increase?
Nope, just the standard hardware, including printers, scanners or copiers, iPads.
Did we just defer all that last year? Cause I see our number last year was pretty low.
Yeah. We did.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
I'm just curious, what is the number of items that we're talking about here? What is the inventory for data processing as far as the equipment?
I don't have that in front of me, Steve. I'd have to get that from Charlene, but
So how many, cause I'm just looking, that's a pretty large number. Let's just say there's $1,000 a laptop. Well, let's say certainly 2,000 a laptop, right? Printer is probably about $300-400. Or am I missing something there? It just seems like it's a very large increase.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're just estimating instead of actually knowing the number of pieces of equipment that we're thinking of purchasing. And I get we might have to buy equipment for the new town hall, but it sounds like we are. Well, it looks like we are gonna refurbish the whole thing, which is fine if we need it, but.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening? We're estimating replacing everything?
no way. But I'll go over that with her before we make the final recommendations.
Madam Chair,
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Mike, some of those printers are the actual big commercial printers, they're not like the desktop printers that we're looking at as well that she maintains, correct? Like the town hall has a big beast and cleaning board upstairs and stuff, so those are very pricey. And then, my question to you, Mike, was the radios, what radios are covered under data processing?
Well, let me see. So, Cybercom radios, repeaters, microwaves, and the satellite receivers. And then, Southeastern Regional Police Radio.
Okay, so that's a throwback from the old communications days, still carried on her budget.
Correct. Yep.
Have those been updated as part of the new summer? Because they were obsolete when I was there.
Yeah, I know the chiefs could talk more. I know Summerk has a plan, with some of the radios. And I don't know if, Brian wants to talk on that.
Yeah, so good evening, everybody. So about 2 weeks ago, there was a large communication project that was, every tower was upgraded. It was over $300,000 that came at the expense of a grant, no expense to the town. So the police station here was upgraded, every single repeater and receiver was upgraded.
Awesome, Chief.
And Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Michael, just again, I know professional services and telephone communications compared to previous years, we're dropping that pretty significant compared to the expenditures. We think that's a good number, or are we?
I'll obviously double check and see what dropped off.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
Right, so you're moving into the new town hall this year. What is included in that build out? The phone systems, is there new computers, under the capital money that was approved?
For the new town hall, it would be furniture, phones, no computer equipment. No copiers, no computer equipment. just new phones.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Mike, is that gonna be a recurring theme was each department that's gonna be moving in there tasked with kind of thinking about that in their budget cycle? Just what I'm asking the question over and over?
No, none of the other departments would have to worry about any of that stuff.
It would all hit here?
Yep.
Alright,
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Cody.
Mike, on the equipment repair maintenance line item,
Mhm.
it looks like historically that's not required very much. We built in 13,450 this past year and currently we've only spent 3,800. Is there a reason that needs to be at 12,500?
Well, we've already spent 11,000.
No, the line item.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's obviously something we'll look at when we're doing our reductions.
Okay, anyone have anything else for data processing? All right, hearing nothing, moving on.
I believe is police next. Police is up.
Hi, Chief Clark.
You're on mute, chief.
Yeah, unmute. Can't hear you.
Can I just share my,
Oh,
sorry about that.
there
Can
you
I
are.
share my screen?
You should be able to.
All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right, so this year's fiscal 25 budget is a 4.9% increase from last year. The far majority of the increase is contractual obligations. Give you a little overview real quick. So there's approximately 17 employees that receive step increases this year, 3 that have longevity increases, 4 that have vacation increases. We're currently down 2 officers, one from a resignation last February and one from a retirement in the last couple of weeks from a long-term injury. The injury was almost 2 years old. We have 2 people in the academy right now, but they won't get out and be ready on the road till at the very earliest July and then probably the beginning of October. We have 2 officers that have some long-term sicknesses that they're dealing with right now. So we're dealing with some health related issues. We did benefit this year from a few grant funding cycles. One in particular is the DMH grant that we get for our mental health clinician, which, if you asked me probably 10 years ago, I wouldn't have seen this valuable tool that we use, but I can't imagine working in this day and age without a clinician. And I can tell you that the officers can't either. We also received a burn grant this year, and it was one that I put in for with the fire department for active shooter training so that we don't have to expend overtime for that. And we just actually did our first one about 2 weeks ago. We also have a civilian police advocate that's through a grant with the district attorney's office. So those grants are very beneficial to us. We have a officer that's assigned to a DEA task force, and all his overtime is reimbursed by the Drug Enforcement Administration. So we don't see that money. We pay it out, but we don't see it directly. It comes back to us and it goes into the general fund. And we still continue to have 2 full-time school resource officers, and then we have a part-time school resource officer. All the school resource officers are paid for by the police department, not the schools. And that's a very great program, probably not the right language, but a very good program we have. They're kind of rock stars in the schools, so they're a great resource. And also the passing of police reform legislation in 2020, you might have heard me say that before, that's definitely had some increase in training and some policy changes. So with that, I'll kind of go through some what I have for the budget. So our increase request is $210,619. The increase in salaries for this year is all contractual for 35 full-time police officers, an administrative assistant, and a part-time records clerk, $226,000. My salary increase, $5,730. The overtime, which I added a sheet, which I usually do, explaining some overtime needs that I'm glad to go over later, but there is no increase in overtime. I've kept it at this amount for the last 3 years. Hopefully when we get the people out of the academy and we become a little more healthy, this will be a good number. Longevity pay, there's like I mentioned, there's a couple people that get longevity increases this year. No increase in shift pay, no fringe benefits increase. The incentive pay is a contractual increase. That's a $6,500 increase. No increase in injury and vacancy. That's if somebody's out injured, we've backfilled their shifts with this line item. I took it upon myself to reduce the special police and the matron. With police reform and the way that was laid out, there's no more reserve intermittent academy, so we cannot hire any new special police officers. We have 2, I'll call them legacy special police officers now, but their availability isn't there, so we don't use them as much. We actually force people into overtime a little more than we ever did. So, and the same thing with the matrons. They're called in when a female is arrested. But we have 6 female police officers on our department, so usually there's shifts of staff that we don't need to fill a matron position. The expenses, you'll see that there actually is a reduction in the majority of the expenses, or there's no increase. The repair, maintenance, and building, there's a slight increase of $1,000. Uniform and clothing, there's an increase of $2,000, which is contractual. No increase in the professional services, telephone, and there's actually a reduction in the contracted services because we're not using a couple of things that we've used in the past. So it's like a $3,600 reduction there. No increase in office supplies, and no increase in outside services or educational supplies. Ammunition is level funded at the same amount it's been at for years. We are looking at one of our capital programs is to get new firearms. So we'll be purchasing new ammunition for next year if that goes through. But I think this number is pretty fair and inaccurate. So, and then really no other increases per se. The educational assistants, so we have numerous officers that are pursuing a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, and per contract they receive reimbursement up to 75% for those classes. This past fiscal year, there was a large amount of people that got their degrees or getting their degrees. I don't see that for next year. I think a lot of people are going to be done this fiscal year, so that's why there's a reduction of $26,900. We'll have to see how that goes next year, but I think the number is fair. So no increase in the police academy, and slight increase in the professional dues that occurred, and no increase in the equipment. I also, which you can't really read from here because it's upside down the way it's scanned in, is this lists everybody's salary and then the overtime and how the budget's calculated for personnel services. The budget years over the past couple of years. Employee benefits are listed here. A breakdown for vacation, longevity, clothing, education, training, and fringe benefits. The organizational chart. And then I've been adding this because no matter what, I think every single year we have somebody that leaves the department. A lot of times are not planned for, it's not necessarily a planned retirement. So, but you can see over the course of 25 years, it's literally almost every year. And that's kind of the overview that I have for you. I did include in the budget packet for you an overview of what the police reform is. Or I should say the peace officers standard and training, and also what we're an accredited police department and what accreditation means. So with that, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Chief. You mentioned the mandates for the trainings, since the police reform. How much is that budgeted for? What is that increased for this coming year?
No, I didn't include any increases in overtime for this fiscal year.
No, for the mandated trainings you talked about with the police reform.
That would be included, that would be in the overtime amount, but there's nothing specific on set outside just for that.
Okay.
So each officer has to go through a week of in-service training, and then we're required to do a day of firearms, less lethal, CPR, first responder. The school resource officers are now required to go through 2 additional days of training. Every instructor that we have for firearms or less lethal has to go through an extra day of training. I don't have it all spelled out, but that's kind of where we're at. I think next year, I mentioned the burn grant that we got for active shooter training. That's going to be required of everybody to have within the next fiscal year, and I'm hoping we can get the majority of our officers through in the fire department, to be honest with you, this year, so that everybody will have a certificate, so that we don't have to, we're not paying the overtime for that next year.
Anyone have any questions for Chief Clark?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Sandy.
Hi, Chief. I had a question about the document that you wrote, the cover sheet you wrote about the information you said about the three officers, a minimum on the road at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You said something about there are several variables that will make this difficult to maintain. Is that the minimum of 3, or is that the sporadic 4 that you were referring to there?
Yeah, I think the 4 is almost unsustainable under the current environment that we have. We would need a lot more overtime or a lot more officers to maintain that without forcing people on a daily basis. I mean, I truly believe that the day shift and the 4 to 12 shift should be manned at 4 officers on the road minimum, but it's just not sustainable if we're not going to fund enough overtime, or if we're not going to hire enough police officers. And with the current situation, it's just not going to happen.
Are you concerned that you might not even be able to staff 3? Is that, because I know you had mentioned all the staffing issues you've had, and
No, we're gonna staff 3. I'm not gonna close the department or like we did 25 years ago or anything. That's a public safety and a officer safety issue. So I wouldn't go below 3, but it's been, I mean, as long as I've been here, that's been the minimum.
have your demands gone up? I mean, you said that that's been the minimum. Have demands and calls and all that gone up in the last 30 years while your staffing has stayed stagnant?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think the job has changed. We handle a lot of mental health issues. We still handle a lot of traffic related issues. So our proactivity maybe has changed a little bit, where you're getting called to different areas. I have this little triangle that I put together, and the three areas that I think that we handle: calls for service, we're required to go to the calls for service, community policing, and traffic safety. And those 3 really are the things that we handle on a daily basis. We put something out a week or so ago about a crash on Richardson Ave. There's not many crashes on Richardson Ave, but if you see social media, everybody pipes in that, the speeding cars all over the place, but there's literally only 3 officers on the road a good amount of time. It's just tough when people are out training, or there's a vacation day or a sick day or something. It's tough to backfill those positions. When we're healthy, it's easier to have 4 officers on the road. This has not been a healthy year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Chief, how are you doing tonight?
Good, thanks.
Just curious, any impact with Wheaton? I think, do they still have their staff for their police officer? Is that gone now, or is that come back in any direction, and then you see an increase in the service calls for Wheaton itself.
No, they haven't. They still have just two people who would be considered special state police officers. The rest are, lack of a better term, security guards. But our calls for service have not gone up over there. They haven't. They don't call us for much. They kind of handle it themselves.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair?
Zach, was that you?
Yes, hi, Chief.
Hi there.
So on a typical shift, when you say you have 3 officers, you have 3 officers and a sergeant or a lieutenant on, and somebody at the desk, correct? So there's minimum of 5 people
Yeah.
per shift?
No, there's a minimum of 3 on the road, 1 on the desk. Minimum of 4.
So that includes the supervisor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Kevin.
Hi, Chief, how you doing?
Hi there. Good, thanks.
I was just wondering, you mentioned the grant that I think is funding the clinicians that are doing the ride-alongs, and obviously that's something that's, the mental health calls certainly continue to go up. Is the funding from that secured long-term, or is that something you have to renew on a regular basis?
And so it was a 3-year grant. It's good for next fiscal year, and then we'll look to renew it. We get the grant with Rainham. It's a $200,000 grant split, kind of down the middle. So $100,000 for us and $100,000 for Rainham.
All right, thanks. No, I think that's just a really good service to have. I hope the grant is able to be renewed.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Cody.
Hi, Chief.
Hi there.
You mentioned, I know it's not on the budget, but you mentioned you'll be applying for the capital expenditure on new firearms and new ammunition. Is there a reason you'd need new ammunition? Are you going to a different caliber, or can you
Yeah, exactly. So we're looking to go to a 9mm versus a 40 caliber that we have now. So it would require new ammunition. So this past fiscal year, we'll probably use the majority of we have one more training coming up. We'll probably use the majority of our 40 caliber ammunition. So we hope that there won't be much left over. We'll just be purchasing new 9mm if the capital goes through for those firearms.
Okay. Will the capital wouldn't be able to include the ammunition for the new firearms?
It does have some. I'm just a little concerned about. Let me just double check. And the capital did have some ammunition in it. It's $6,000. So 10,000. So we'll have to go through an additional day of training with the new firearms. So 10,000 is usually what we allocate each fiscal year. So this additional 6,000 would assist us if it comes out of capital.
Presumably the 9mm is cheaper than the 40 cal, and so going forward the ammunition cost would be less.
The ammunition cost would definitely be less.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Joe.
This isn't a question, Chief. I just want to say thank you for everything that you and the department do to provide the service that you provide to the town and keep us all safe. I don't know if you get thanked enough, but I want to personally say thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Clark. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay.
Right.
Communications.
Yep, so under communications, this is our assessment for SEMREC, which is the regional dispatch. And this year we go up from the 300,000 to 450,000. Foxborough and Mansfield have been at the 450 for a couple of years now, but they were into the center before we were. So now Easton and Norton will be up to the 450,000.
Do you want to share the budget, Mike?
I don't have anything on it. It's just the one
Okay,
assessment of 450.
okay.
Madam
Anyone
Chair,
have questions? Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Mike, that is still actually less than what we used to spend on communications 4 or 5 years ago, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, it's been in good service, so.
Mike, wasn't there discussion about joining like a larger region too with this? Is that still in discussion?
Yes, we're still, we actually just had all the towns together and everyone has agreed to that they support the idea. Now we're working on an agreement between SEMREC and the other 6 towns. So hopefully that'll happen by June of this year. At
Do you
least
know
the
what that
agreement-
annual
at least-
cost would?
Well, we're working on right now the assessments and how the district will be administered, and probably be a year from June before they all would come in. But that's hopefully that's going forward.
All right, any questions
Madam
on
Chair?
communications? Yes, Bill.
Mike, is the 450 going to be kind of level, or is it going to bump up again next year? A lot will depend on what happens with the negotiations with these other communities. We're hoping that bringing in more communities will improve on the economy of scale, and maybe it'll stay stable. Thank you.
Sorry, 2 seconds. I'm gonna have to go off video. Joe, could you just
Sure.
take over for a minute? Thanks.
Any other questions on this assessment? All right, looks like we can move on, Mike.
All right, next we have the Deputy Chief Wilson for the Fire Department budget.
How are you tonight, Chief?
Good evening, everybody. First off, I want to say that Chief Simmons gives his apologies. He had a pretty significant family medical emergency over the weekend that he has to attend to. So unfortunately, he's not able to make it here. He did want to relay to everybody, though, if you have any specific questions, please email him, call him. He said everybody has his contact information. So if there's anything specific that you need to discuss with him, please, he'll take the time to speak to anybody on the FinCom. I've been with him for the last 2 or 3 years, helping him with the budget. I don't know it perfectly as he does, but I have basically everything we talked about, all his notes. So I'm pretty confident that I can answer, most of the questions that everybody has tonight.
All right, thank you. Do you have the budget to share your screen?
I think Mike does.
All right, Mike. Lost him.
Of course. It never fails, right?
Thought he was off the hook.
Yeah, because that was easy, right?
All right.
All right, I mean, I can start with some of the numbers. Maybe Mike can put the budget up afterwards,
Okay.
and we can kind of look. So, starting with let me go back here. Starting with the personal services, which is basically the salaries and wages. The request for this year is $3,381,024. That's an increase of $290,845. Basically, the salaries have been calculated for level service with increases for the CBA, which was settled last year. This increase also represents a step increase for 19 members of the department through the CBA. As everybody I'm sure is aware, our SAFER grant will expire prior to this budget. It expires, I believe, at the end of March. So that's resulting in an increase next year for the FY25 budget of $179,504, which is going to be coming out of the ambulance receipts. When we came to, the boards and were looking to do the SAFER grant 3 years ago, one of the things that we talked about was, if we were going to do it, we wanted to be able to sustain that afterwards with the people that we hired. And from the start, our plan was when we get to the point where the SAFER grant was no longer available, that we were going to take that money out of the ambulance receipts. As far as, excuse me, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I just have
okay.
a question about
Sure.
that. So, the 179,504 you said,
Yes,
that's going to be 100% covered by the ambulance receipts?
yes, that's
What do-
what we're putting in for.
What do you usually get for ambulance receipts annually? Remind me.
Okay, well, I can tell you, so right now, let me get that number for you, I have it right now. So right now, as of today, the balance in the ambulance receipts is $4,254,057. On average, we've been taking in about $1.3 to $1.4 million per year. This year has been kind of like an unusual year. We're actually probably on the road to close to 1.9 million. One of the things, before I was a deputy chief, I was EMS director for almost 30 years. And I can tell you that one of the reasons why the receipts have gone up this year, which you have to kind of use a little caution with this, is we've had a lot of private insurances as opposed to like Medicare and stuff like that. That's what's shown a lot of the increase this year. So it's not something that we can turn around and say, hey, we had all this year. Next year, we're going to have the same thing. It's one of those things that we've just had a lot of patients that have private insurance, and those receipts are higher with private insurance versus the state sponsored, like the Medicare and stuff like that.
Okay.
That hopefully answer your question.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Hey, Mike's back. Do you actually have the budget, Mike, to put up?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just while Mike's getting to the budget, Deputy Chief, so the ambulance receipts, you said you're closer to 1.9 million this year, you were 1.4 last year.
That's what we're projecting.
Just looking at the estimated operating revenues and expenditures that were sent out for the meeting, it looks like we're only carrying an estimate of 850,000 a year. So I don't know if Mike can speak to that, or if that's something that's provided to him by the fire department.
I'll actually defer that to Mike. I believe that's about where we are, and that's minus, capital and things like that.
Trying to figure out how to rotate by you, but I can't find it.
The third one up.
Oh, I see it down here. Found it.
There you
All right.
go. Okay.
So Mike, I don't know if you heard the question, but is there, under the estimated operating revenues, the line item in that budget shows 850,000 for the ambulance, and 1.4 million or 1.9 million. Is there a way we can increase that, or is that number the net number after expenses associated with them?
We're going to look at increasing that.
Okay. So moving on to overtime, the request this year is $679,834. That's an increase from FY 2024 of $2,270. This overtime reflects level service with keeping Station 1 currently open. Some factors that that are affecting overtime. We're trying to fill vacancies. I know Chief Simmons has come on several times and told you the issues that we're having with filling these positions. We're going out of civil service. We're hoping that that's going to make it a little bit easier, but the bottom line is there's still a shortage of paramedics. So whether it's civil service or not, we're still going to have this issue, and it's going to be challenging. When we hire people, for instance, we have hired 3 people to fill 3 open positions from retirements. They're really not going to be counted for staffing until probably January of 2025. They just started today, and by the time we get them through the academy and other training that they need to do, they're not really counted as staffing until they're through that. So, and that's really nothing we can do about it. We're at basically the academy's, beck and call on when they can get them into that. So, so obviously we have to carry those positions until we can get them and they can count as staffing. We have probably 4 to 5 people that could retire this year. There's nothing in the contract that says they have to notify us up front. So we just don't know. We try to get them to give us maybe a little bit of a hint on, when they're going to go. I can tell you one of the things I said at the last selectmen's meeting, I've been on the department since 1987, and this is the first time that on paper we have had full staffing. So I say that really with a lot of knocking on wood, because it seems like every time we do that, somebody retires or somebody leaves or gets injured. As far as that goes, we hope that doesn't happen. Like I said before, there's 19 members who have an increased pay scale, which affects the budget. When they go from one step to another step, obviously that affects the budget too. The other thing we're seeing a lot is the FMLA. We do have a younger department, which means we have a lot of people who are in childbearing ages, and we're seeing a lot of people taking that FMLA that we have to fill. We've had 5 people this year, and that's something that's very hard to predict for the next year, because you just don't know, obviously who's going to have a baby and who's not going to have a baby. But that is something that definitely affects our staffing when people go out for FMLA. The other thing he just wanted me to, we did add a holiday this year, Juneteenth. The holiday pay is actually taken out of the overtime. So when someone's working the holiday, the overtime comes out of the general overtime budget too. And then, of course, we've had a couple of mandates this year. Some of you might have heard about Nero's Law, where we're actually treating canines, service dogs that might be injured in the line of duty. That was required training from the state that we really had, we didn't have any discretion with that. We had to train everybody on that, and it had to be basically a didactic, and then it had to be basically a practical with the dogs and things like that. And it seems like each year the state is throwing more mandates at us that we have no choice. We have to train the people to that level.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Joe.
Chief, I know that you mentioned, and I know we passed we're getting out of civil service. When does that actually take effect?
So we hope it's, I guess the best way to put it is it's there on paper right now. It just really has to be ratified between the town and the union. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to have something within the next 30 days. It's going to be totally ratified, and we're ready to go with that out of civil service.
Okay, thank you.
With that, I guess while we're on the topic, there is an additional in the expenses on, I think it's in professional services, that we're going to have to increase that, because I guess the only benefit for civil service was, aside from some minor fees, everything was pretty much covered by them. We're going to have an assessment center come in, and they're going to have to do basically the promotional exam, and there's going to be a cost to that, unfortunately, to do the promotional exams and have a list that's available for 2 years. So we're hoping that that'll be an every 2-year type expense, and we can keep the list for the 2 years and hopefully promote from that within those 2 years. So as far as fire operating expenses, does anybody have any questions on the salary part of it or the overtime part of it before I move on?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Cody.
2 things. The 2 of the 3 top expenses there being the additional gross overtime and incentive pay. I'm just looking back at historically where those have come in. And when it comes to overtime, I know you mentioned the additional holiday, but I don't expect that that's gonna account for a lot of increase there. If you're on paper fully staffed, is that number accurate? I mean, based on 6 months of, through 12/31/23, we were only at 207. And historically, we've been at 626 and 574. Are we gonna hit that 677? Is there a reason that we need to take it up to 679?
Okay, good question. Just so you know, like, and I know I mentioned the holiday, and I think sometimes people, they kind of look at that and say it's not a big deal. It's about $100,000 as far as the holiday, just so we can kind of get, kind of like equated to that. I can tell you as far as staffing, our minimum manning to keep Station 1 open is eight members. We have to have 8 on duty. With these 3 members being hired, that brings us to 10. Unfortunately, the more people you have on duty, the more contractual time that can be taken off. For instance, contractually, out of those 8 people, we could actually have 7 people off duty contractually. And that doesn't really count for sick time on top of that. That's just contractual type stuff. So there might be a time that we have to fill, 6 or 7 positions when people are out. So that's kind of like the first thing. The second thing is the number that you're looking at is equating to not really the busy time of year. April, May, June is the highest. I guess July and August are too, but April, May, and June has a lot of people taking their vacation and their contractual leave. And I do have one of them here that about 50% of the vacation time and contractual leave has still not been taken. So I know you look at that and you say, well, that's half a year. Can you kind of take that and just double it? And that's what it's going to be. But it really isn't. It's only accounting to about 50% of what was taken just with the contractual leave stuff. And that's not things like the specialty positions where we have people with the tech rescue team, the dive team, the SWAT team, and stuff like that, that they have to do, monthly drills and things like that. And then obviously if we have any major calls within the town of Norton, that usually requires us to call people back under overtime also. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for overtime, just, we're looking at overall for the entire town, and if we can, what little bit, if there's a way we can, bring this down, and if it does go over, pull from other sources.
Right, I get that.
This year, I'm just looking ahead and saying,
Yep.
If there's any, there's not going to be much room for any fat to build in and say, let's fudge on the upper side of this, and if we have some left over, then I'll burn the free cash next year. We're already dipping free cash for annual expenditures and full-time positions, and
Yeah, no, I get that, and we're hoping, if you look at it, and common sense would tell you that if we have 8 people on duty and we have to fill 8 people, well, it's better if you have 10 people on duty because we can go down 2 people before we have to fill. And that seems to be happening more now just with the increase we have already. But again, to turn around and say, what's going to happen when, somebody goes on an FMLA or somebody gets injured and stuff like that. That's kind of like the crystal ball that we always try to look at, that I wish there was an answer for that. But unfortunately, there isn't. That's what we kind of get gray hair over is, are we going to be able to make it to the end of the year and still be able to maintain those 8 people on duty? So with that said, I mean, if we go down below 8, we will have to, we'll have to shut Station 1 down. Now, that could be sporadic, and that might be like the first step where it's not open every single shift. And some shifts, maybe we're not going to be able to, fill to the minimum manning. But again, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to project. And I would think that after a period of time, if we can sustain the 10 people on duty, then I would think that overtime is going to slowly go down. I know Chief Simmons did a pretty extensive, kind of like a research project on this, that it actually helps out for the first 3 years. But once you get to that 4th year, basically it kind of evens out as far as how much you're spending on overtime. But with that said, I know in the past we've had that cut before, and we've had to, make do with what we have. So,
Yeah, when you're pulling from, like you're building in the vacation time and the holiday time and all of that stuff, does that then offset against the regular salary and wages? So if they're not on shift and they're pulling overtime or holiday pay, we've got over 10% increase over last year on the salary and wages on top of, an increase on the overtime. So does it offset, so the extra 100,000 for another holiday, does that come out of the 100,000 from salary?
Well, no, the anything like with the additional holiday with the Juneteenth, that's gonna come out of the overtime. Because the people that are on duty are gonna get holiday pay on that. So, yeah, any addition on that basically would come out of the overtime. Just like training, like for instance, if we have 2 people on a shift that are on a specialty team, such as like the tech rescue team, that has to be backfilled with 2 people to maintain that minimum manning, and that's going to count as overtime, which we do have a training a line item so we can kind of see what that is. A lot of the stuff can be calculated right to the dollar, but what can't be calculated is the emergencies that you have callback, the FMLA, again, the person injured and things like that. That's the stuff that really, there's just no way to calculate that. You can look back maybe the last 3 or 4 years and say, well, we averaged this many people on FMLA, but then you can have 5 other people go on FMLA, and that's the problem we have.
Right. And then just the other piece on the incentive pay, again, it's a pretty significant spike there between what was budgeted for the current year and the previous 2 years, what was actually expended. Is that a direct calculation of what we know is coming?
Yes. So basically, on the incentive pay, the request is 643,890. There's a increase of 54,328, and this basically reflects contractual increases and additional members that have attained degrees, certifications, and credits. So it's all contractual. So if someone goes from a associate's degree to a bachelor's degree, that's all kind of figured in there. And that's something that's tough too, because you kind of look at a person and you see the progress that they're doing, and you assume that if they keep up this progress, they're going to go to the next level. And that most of the time happens, but that's where it's tough to turn around and say, well, if someone's close to, say, a master's degree, you kind of have to put it in there if they're a couple credits short from that. If they don't attain that, then, you might have a little bit extra, but if they do attain it, then obviously that money comes out of there 100%. So it's a tough thing to predict. But again, all that is contractual.
Yeah, I'm looking at the packet back behind page 5. Looks like it's directly each and every incentive total up to 75.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So by my calculation, it looked like it was about an 8% increase from last year to this year. If we were only able to allocate 4% increase, what could be cut? Is the 8% like all contractual, all mandated?
I believe most of it is. Again, you got to put into that the SAFER grant and what we're actually putting in that from the ambulance account. But, most of it is. Again, the overtime is something that we're going to try to give the service the best we can. If Station 1 has to be closed, that's kind of like the normal progression we would have, because we can move whatever we have left on that station to headquarters and keep up that 8-person, minimum. So yeah, that's probably the only budget that maybe have a little bit of wiggle room depending on, what happens and, how we can keep that staffed for Station 1 open. But that's going to have a direct reflect as far as the overtime. If that gets cut, then we're going to have to look at how we can keep that station open for the year, but provide the same type service.
Yeah, someone who lives on the side of town with that station, I would hate to see that to have to close.
True.
But we're facing some tough decisions, I think, this year.
Yeah, no, we get it. It's one of those things. And listen, you've been told before about the response times and things that can happen. So, I'm not going to bore everybody with that. That's, the bottom line is if that station shuts down, there are areas of town that could take us 8 to 10 minutes to get to, and that can directly affect, you know, the survival rate and things like that. But I think everybody pretty much understands that. That's not something that's new, and this is something that's been discussed before over the years.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Cody.
question for Mike. Since the ambulance receipts are directly related to the fire department, is there a way that those can be turned back directly to offset the budget needs?
No, they have to go in, as we do it, they go into the general fund and are available for appropriation.
Is there a way, just thinking about, like, obviously taking on the EMS department and having more paramedics on site, like all of that stuff, it results in those revenues. I would just, if there's an easier way to say, you know, water and sewer enterprise, I know we can't like enterprise fire, but it's effectively take that kind of approach where if fire is bringing in 1.4 million a year in ambulance receipts, offsetting their budget need by 1.4 million, you know, if they have an estimated, you know, 850,000, a million, whatever it is there a way to account for that within the budget so that, you know you're going to have some level of income offsetting that on a regular basis? It comes in, it gets certified as free cash, and is there a way to like preemptively do that?
No, there really isn't, because like I said, it has to go to the general fund. I know that obviously this is a large amount of money, but you can look at inspections and they could say, why can't all the receipts we get for doing inspections go to the building department?
Mike, it's Madam Chair. So,
Yeah.
Cody, one of the other things is the 1.4 million coming in on an annual basis. They're kicking 850 right into the budget right out of the gate. Then they have the capital expenditures that get covered directly by those funds as well. So that's what, on an annual basis, it almost breaks even, Cody. It's not like it's rolling in the dough. It's just had a couple of good years of income coming in right now, which is fortuitous because there's a couple of really big capital items coming up. So.
Yeah, I know we've pulled from it before, and it's good to have some sort of revenue source coming in to help offset stuff. I just, you know, when you're looking at a request for 10% or 12%, like whatever the increase is, and we know we're only getting 2.5% because of Prop 2.5. Like we've got 1.9 to spend. It's got to go to, you know, where it needs to go. And if there's ways to offset that, I just, you know.
Yeah, like Chief Schleicher said, I know it looks like a big amount of money, but when you look at, you know, what an ambulance costs, the stuff that we're taking out of that, I mean, sometimes, again, it looks good, but, and I know it sounds funny, but if you really broke it down to what we're paying out versus what we're taking in, it really is not profitable. I know it looks, because we add that money up, but then when we turn around and we take, you know, an ambulance now is $475,000. We have 2 ambulances now that I hope to get in the next, you know, one's been ordered for 3 years. I mean, there's $800,000 or $900,000 that comes out of that right from the top with those ambulances. So, you know, it's stuff like that. And the last thing we want to do is bring that down and then not be able to replace an ambulance, or, you know, knock on wood really hard, we don't have an ambulance breakdown, crash, or whatever happens to an ambulance, and then not have the ability to be able to bring that money in. We're very lucky to have 3 ambulances, to have one that backs up if one goes out of service. But, you know, right now it's such a tough way to get ambulances. If something happens, we have no way to get another ambulance in a short period of time. And that would be devastating because, you know, if we go down to 1 ambulance, we're still going to have the calls, but other communities are going to have to come in and basically transport the people and get those funds. Any other questions on as far as the expenses? I think I talked a little bit about the professional services and, you know, with the civil service now, having to have the, out of civil service and having to do that part. The only other thing is the repair and maintenance of the vehicles. Obviously, that seems to go up every year, and the prices are outrageous what we have to pay. But you really have to put it into perspective. If you have a vehicle that's $500,000, you know, an oil change is not going to be $100. That's just kind of how that works. We're doing the best we can to keep these vehicles, you know, up and running. And we have a really good preventative maintenance program that I think has helped keep that price down. But it seems like every year we have one major breakdown, and that kind of takes that budget down. So the increase in the repair and maintenance of the vehicles was $1,800. And then the only other thing was the educational assistance, which we talked about that.
And I just put up my the capital so you can see that when we come before you with capital, they're looking right now to use $655,750 out of ambulance receipts for capital.
And that's in addition to the $850,000.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Zach.
how much, Mike, were we getting for the SAFER grant? What were we getting annually for that from the federal government? Mike can probably help me, but I know it started out, they were paying for the full salary for the first year, and then I think it went down as the years went on, Mike, the
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah, they paid, I believe for 3 years, they paid the full salary, incentives, benefits, everything, basically to have, you know, those members be paid for, including step increases and everything. It was well over $1 million that we got over the 3 years.
Okay, so that's reflecting this budget as it all falls off and it becomes a burden of the town.
Yes, and that price right now to add those positions is $179,000, I believe $540, which is accounted for in this budget, taking it out of the ambulance receipts.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Joe.
Kind of piggybacking on that, we cannot reapply for that grant. Is it not available anymore? Was that a COVID thing or?
Well, the thing about the grant is what they do is they categorize things as high priority, medium priority, and low priority. And when you just get it, you can apply for it, but it's low priority, and they tell you that you're not going to get it. You know, it's the same thing, kind of like we're going for a grant for the Scott Packs, and Scott Packs right now are at high priority. If that was a medium or a low priority, we wouldn't even put in for it because they just kind of tell you, I don't know why they have it, because they tell you that you're not going to get it if it's a medium or low. So I believe the turnaround usually is 5 to 10 years before they want you to reapply, and you really have, you know, kind of like a competitive advantage as far as that goes.
Got it. And there's nothing comparable that we could apply for instead?
Nothing to the SAFER grant, nothing to that extent. You know, I can tell you, we try to get any grant that we possibly can get. You know, kind of going back to the ambulance account, we have that Medicare CPE grant that, you know, up to date, we've collected almost $700,000 over the last 4 years. And that's money that basically Medicare has said that they're going to reimburse us because they don't pay us enough for ambulance receipts. So we do anything we can. Any grant that comes out, we try to get it. Our motto is, we'll try it. If we don't get it, we don't get it. I can tell you the Scott Pack, this will be the 3rd year that we're going for the Scott Pack grant. What we're against is people are getting Scott Packs replaced from 1997 and ours are 2009. So our philosophy is eventually they're going to replace all those and get to the 2009. And that's $500,000 that, you know, that we're trying to get in there. So whatever grant is out there, I can guarantee you, we try to apply to anything we possibly can to offset anything we actually can.
I remember Chief Simmons mentioning the CPE money. It's like 140 or 160,000. That he said that might be able to be used for Station 1.
Yeah.
What is that grant money used for?
So this basically, so Medicare for a while thought they were paying us too much, and it's just kind of comical because the average Medicare ambulance receipt is about $400. So they thought they were paying us too much. So they did this whole program to try to find out if they're paying us too much. And they found out that obviously they're paying us way too little. So they said, well, we'll take what your receipts are and, you know, what you've paid in. And this goes to how much fuel we've used. This goes to how much electricity we've used and everything based on the ambulance. And they have a formula and they basically give you money at the end of the fiscal year to supplement the ambulance receipts. And I can tell you, we've been doing it for 4 years. Year one, we got 133,000. Year two, we got 161,000. Year three, we got 198,000. This year, they actually cut the formula in half, believe it or not. But we got 150,000 still this year. And what happens is usually they throw about 10,000 on top of that and say, well, this is for incidentals as far as that. They have told us this is going to go on at least another 3 or 4 years. But this is money that basically just gets deposited into the ambulance account at the end of the fiscal year. So right now, we've brought in about $650,000 just with that Medicare CPE grant.
Okay, so that's just factored into the ambulance, you said?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it has to get deposited into the ambulance receipts because technically
okay.
it's for anything that we haven't collected as far as from normal receipts.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Paul.
we heard Chief Clark mention earlier about the radio upgrades and stuff, and sometimes you don't realize that both departments do aggressively chase every penny they can on the outside, trying to offset some of the load on the town.
Yeah, we just got a grant for portable radios, all brand new portable radios that we work with Semric for that. That's going to be no cost to the town. That was about a $250,000 investment that we would have had to pay to upgrade our radios. So yeah, we try to get any grant we possibly, even small ones. We got one recently for $2,500 that we bought a Sparky costume. I was telling Chief Schleicher, I was kind of joking about that, but we bought a new Sparky costume because it was very restricted on what you could actually buy. So we try to get any grant we can to try to help out the budget.
Paul,
Go ahead, Zach.
comment and a question. In regards to ambulance fees, if anybody's interested, I just saw today that on Fox 25 News, they're doing a segment tonight at 10 o'clock about the collection of ambulance fees, similar to what Deputy Chief Wilson was talking about, if anybody's interested in that. And secondly, and Deputy, correct me if I'm wrong, on the SAFER grants, if you were to let those people go, you would have to repay the federal government the $1 million, is the way I understand it.
I don't know if it's the full amount, but I believe it's a prorated amount every year you go away from it. But there is definitely a penalty within that you have to pay them back.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Cody?
I don't know if we just haven't gotten to it or we haven't talked about it. The emergency medical, the 230, on the next page. You got the line item there for the training. I know we're carrying that, like last year we put 55,000 in there in hopes that we could pull from it. Just going back to not building in additional things that maybe aren't needed. What does it cost to train one person?
So right now, tuition for a paramedic is $16,500 just for the tuition. The books are, because it's an associate's degree, it used to be a certificate degree, but now it's an associate's degree. So you have to have obviously all the prerequisites in order to become a paramedic. And then the books, that's where it differs a little bit on the different programs, but the books can be anywhere from, and like when I say books, I'm talking about like online testing and stuff like that, that's all together, can be anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000. So, the last 3 that went, it was a $16,500 plus about $3,000 per, for the books and other things that go with the program. What we try to do, believe it or not, is we try to offset. So if we have 1 year, then we might have a little bit of money left in that training, and we know that another person is going to try to take some of the pressure off. If we have anything, we try to work out a deal with the program to say, hey, maybe we can give a little bit of this, to take off for the next year budget. Right now, we have right now we have 3 people currently in paramedic training that have all been paid. The tuition's been paid. We have these 3 new people that 2 of them are gonna have to go to the paramedic program. One of them is an advanced, so it's not gonna be as much, but it's still gonna be about $12,000 because he's a little bit higher level. So the program's a little bit shorter, so he doesn't have to pay as much. But that's basically where that $55,000 comes. That, and then that covers training for the members already that have to do required training from the state, things like, again, that Narrows Law and all their continuing education stuff that we have to, pay for them to recertify as paramedics and EMTs.
So what's you said there's 2 in and then 1 advanced, so 3 total. And then is all of that going to hit in the new budget year, or is some of it still going to hit under the 55 that's already funded?
That'll hit in the new budget year because they're not there yet to be in the program. What we try to do is we try to have them go through the fire academy first, and then they go on to the paramedic program. Just because, the reason we do that is if they go to the paramedic program, it's tough to do both together. It's more of a benefit to us if we can get them through the academy, because now they can be counted as staffing. If we send them to the paramedic and we're going to wait almost 2 years for them to go to the academy and count as staffing. So we try to get them to the paramedic program first. So this will be for the 3 people after July 1st, probably more like the fall or maybe more towards Christmas. Chances are 1 will probably get in September, and then the other 2 will probably be around January.
So, question for Mike then, is this something that the free cash that we have on account could cover in the fall if we weren't funding, like instead of carrying it as an annual cost, pulling from free cash for that as opposed to like a recurring?
We can delay some things to the fall, just no guarantee there's gonna be money in the fall, but there might be higher priorities, but.
And they also signed memorandums of agreement that they have to pass within a certain amount of time. So again, it's almost like we kind of have to do this, because if they don't pass by a certain time, then basically we have to extend the contract, or they don't have a job. And obviously that's the last thing we want to do as far as that goes. So somebody getting in September, say, they go through the process, July, August of doing the pre-testing and stuff like that, and the money has to be paid. For the ones going in September, it would have to be paid probably the beginning of August. So the only thing I'd be nervous with that is we don't have the actual town meeting till October, and we don't have anything to pay for them, and a lot of them require the pay up front, and that's the only thing I'd be nervous about, something like that. Now,
yeah, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting cutting the whole amount. I'm saying like we did 25,000, would that be enough to cover it? And then if we once we know in the fall what it looks like, it's easier to pull 30,000 from free cash because we'll have at least 30,000, as opposed to what we've been using free cash for, which is funding annual expenditures that are recurring. I mean, I view it as more of a one-off. Like you know that this is a one-time charge for these 3 people, and then you're going to carry a certain level for ongoing training and education. But it's not 16,000 a pop every time.
right, I believe out of that 55,000, I believe about 9,500 is for general training for that account. So the additional under the 9,500 would be for obviously, paying for the tuitions. And the good thing about that is if we maintain and these 3 people get paid, there might come a time that we don't have to put anything except that $9,500 in there until somebody else retires or leaves.
So I would think what will happen is now Mike and the chief will sit down and figure out when those guys are going to be hitting paramedic school, and we'll see if we can reduce that somewhat.
Anyone else have any other questions for our deputy chief?
No question, but extend the same thanks to the fire department that I extended to the police department. Not to demean what our police department does in any way, but I'm always impressed that there are people who are willing to run into a burning building when everyone else is running out.
So, you guys play a factor in that too, because you guys, I know you have to make tough decisions, and you guys are just as important, along with the board of selectmen, to be able, and the town manager, to be able to give us the tools to do this. So you play a part in that too.
And the deputy chief has one more big budget.
Oh, jumped the gun then, sorry.
We can thank him again.
Yeah.
The emergency planning budget.
And I can't say enough for this group of people. These are a bunch of volunteers. They're there when we need them the most. And like I've said before, it's priceless. The stuff that they do for us to even get people to come out in these storms and stuff like that. It's just a great, great organization.
Any questions for emergency planning? Okay, hearing nothing. You're out of the hot seat.
All right. Thank you very much. And I just want to say again, if anybody has any specific questions, I know all of you have the chief's contact. Please, reach out to him, because he said he'll make time to speak to you with whatever you have questions on the budget.
Definitely.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right, next is the inspection budget. The commissioner's at the zoning board tonight, so I'll present his budget. In the inspections department, you have the building commissioner, his administrative assistant, a 25-hour-a-week local inspector, and then we have 3 other on-call inspectors, one for plumbing and gas, one for electrical, and then another for the building inspections. All the salary information there is contractual, and then his expenses, he increased by $50, I believe, this year.
Any questions on inspections?
Madam Chair?
Yep, go ahead, Sandy.
Mike, I just had a general question.
Mhm.
Having trouble with the FY24 numbers that you provided, which I'm trying to, use as a comparison.
Yeah.
I know you take the what we appropriated in the spring and the fall on those 2 big articles. Is there something else small going in there? Because those numbers aren't. I feel like I'm missing something in my calculations. It's not adding up to the same thing.
I'm not sure. This is what I had for this year's budget, so I'll look. Just email me what you saw as a difference.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can move on.
All right.
Animal control.
Animal control. So, animal control, you have the animal control officer and also a part-time animal control officer. His expenses, $14,280. And let me go to the next page to show you for the salaries. We're going to be coming back, I think, for a reserve fund transfer. The police department and SEMREC have been working to try and eliminate some of these off-hour calls that the animal control gets. It's just unbelievable the amount of calls that he gets off hours. Also he has 5 weeks vacation. And so we're looking to increase, he put in for 976 hours for the assistant dog officer. And it's probably, if you look at her salary of $21 an hour versus his by the end of next year or the middle of next year, $35.41. If he's coming in on overtime, because we don't have enough hours for the assistant. It's not cost effective. And so he's looking to go from 588 hours to 976 hours for his assistant. And currently it's 7 days a week, so.
Okay, any questions about our dog officer?
And I'd like to thank Brian. He's been here a long time and does a great job.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Cody.
just on the part-time, is that'll still keep her as a part-time and won't qualify as a full-time with benefits?
Right. She'll still be under if we split it out evenly, she'd still be below 19 hours a week.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I don't know. Jill.
Mike, just so I'm clear, you said, they're working 7 days a week. Are weekends always considered overtime by their pay method, or?
No, that's where the assistant would work Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay.
And fill in for his vacation.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. No more questions. We can move on.
Okay. Board of Health. In the Board of Health, we have the full-time agent and a full-time administrative staff. No, I went back to inspections. That doesn't help. There we go. So we have a full-time agent and we have a full-time administrative staff and one part-time person in the Board of Health. His expenses went up $300 and then same amount of staff and just contractual increases.
Okay. Any questions on this budget? All right. Public nurse.
Public health nurse.
This position was open, right, Mike?
It is open again.
Oh,
We just lost our public health nurse. She moved on to another town.
no.
So right now, this is a 25-hour-a-week position at $36 an hour. And then the budget for expenses, there's a slight increase here for, I believe that was in training and seminars and conferences. And obviously, we'll be looking at this and hopefully we're able to get some quicker than we were in the past. I'll be talking with the health agent and the Board of Health, whether we just get a consultant and save some money on this budget, or if we're able to get someone in. There was a salary survey done recently, and $36 is right where everybody is. Not Middleborough, they paid more.
Is there any way we could share with like another town if we have part-time and they have part-time?
Well, that's what I'm gonna talk with the health department about, because we're in a consortium now. And so I just wanna go over with them what services the consortium can provide that the nurse would provide. And just if we need if we can get a nurse in on a consulting basis just for a certain amount of time, maybe we can look at that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Zach.
Mike, when you say a $36 an hour salary study, that's from municipal governments? Because,
Yeah, it was a survey that was going around with all the town managers.
because I think in a hospital setting, I think it's probably closer to 45.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably part of the problem.
All right, anyone else have questions, comments for public health nurse, board of health? We have one more budget.
Madam Chair,
Landfill.
just to put a point on that, I mean, first, if it's vacant now and we're finding alternatives for it, is there anything preventing us from just eliminating this from the budget?
No, there isn't. You know, if we're not gonna find somebody, that would be something we'd look at.
How long
Yeah.
was it vacant last year, Mike, this position?
I don't know, it seemed like, 6 months.
I think it was vacant when we were talking about the budget last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Mike, if there is no town nurse, who's taking care of like the vaccinations and stuff like that that need to be administered, like to the seniors and things like that, that the nurse?
Well, that's what I wanna look at, what the consortium can do, and if not, do we just, hire, someone on is there a service out there where we can just hire someone to do flu shots?
So you could really zero fund. You should have to have something in there then, even if you're paying for the consortium
Right.
or outside
Yeah.
per diems or something.
It would have some expense line.
Is it something that the EMTs that are certified to do?
We looked at that and, the response was they would have to be on overtime, so,
Not free.
no.
All right.
And sanitary landfill. So this is for the CAP landfill on Hill Street. And I think you've probably heard in the past that the engineering consultant that does the testing for us, they have to test for gas and groundwater this year. And they're continually working with DEP to try and eliminate the groundwater test. So hopefully in the future that'll happen, but every other year they have to do both. So they have to do that this year.
Presumably that's a regulatory requirement.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, any questions on sanitary landfill? Okay. That is it. Mike, did you have, you sent an updated revenues and expenditures?
Yeah.
I noticed it did change that bottom line there, the surplus deficit. What changed here?
So the sheet that I sent, the first sheet I sent you that had the 5.5 million, that was with everyone's requests. And this one I did is just to give you a look at if it was, if the school budget and the town budget increased 4%.
Okay.
So you can see we still have a $2.5 million problem there, even at 4%. So got to keep looking at things, or something else would have to happen.
Something else.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Kevin.
I know we're probably 2 tabs off topic now, but going back to the dog inspection officer for a moment, That's all right, Mike?
Mhm.
Yep.
I think it's a good idea to try to reduce Brian's overtime by upping the part-time hours. But by raising the baseline of the part-time, what's the check to put in place to see if that actually worked? Because next year everyone's going to forget that we upped their base. I mean, maybe somebody in here will be wise enough to remember and say, "Hey, I did the same amount of overtime. That didn't work. What gives?" Or maybe not. What's our check? Because then we're going to start annualizing just a higher base rate for the part-timer.
Well, when you get the spreadsheet every year, it shows you what was expended in overtime each year. So you'll see for 3 years what's been spent in overtime.
Well, I mean, if that happens, then the budget will be overspent, right?
Yeah.
Which we don't want.
Right.
So that's my gauge. If they blow their budget, we know it didn't work. I mean, I'm kind of
No, I mean, like,
Good notes, Kevin.
like when the budget's presented each year.
I'm
you
just
see-
giving you a hard time a little bit, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You see what was expended each year, so it'll show you what was expended in overtime each year, so we'll be able to track it.
All I'm asking, I have a funny pun, but I don't know if it's appropriate. I said, keep the department on a leash, all right, with the overtime.
Okay.
All right, I'm done.
Everyone.
Thanks,
Chair?
Kevin.
Kevin, that was
Sandy.
rough.
That was a quintessential dad joke, right?
Yeah.
Mike, I have a question about I know we had talked about at the joint meeting, the possibility of coming up with 2 budgets.
Mhm.
Is that the plan? Is that, I don't know where, I know select board kind of discussed, some options, but it didn't sound like they had any final decisions, but I don't know what your plans were for, if that was something you were still considering doing.
That's something that'll have to be decided by the school committee and the select board, whether you wanted to just do an override, or if we don't have a vote on an override before a town meeting, then we would have to do the 2 budgets, if that's what people want to do.
So you would be able to, like, you have the information you need to be able to put that together, if that's the way that the select board decides to go?
Yeah, we'll have to do any reductions or increases in different revenue sources and see what a balanced budget will be.
And Mike, the deadline for putting something on this ballot is, the April is what, March 22nd? And I remember that date quite correctly?
And I think that is the date, yes.
So it's coming up.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Questions, comments? We don't have minutes to review. Or does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'm Chair.
Yes, Joe.
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting of the Finance Committee.
Hey.
Second.
Motion in a second. Roll call. Kevin,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
and I too am a yes. Okay, good
Good night.
evening. We'll see you all next Monday.
Good night.
Thank you, Mike.
Good night.
Good night.